My parents asked me for one thing at Christmas dinner, one simple thing, and I said no. They didn't ask for my love. They didn't ask for my time. They asked for every penny I had saved for my future. My mother looked me in the eye and said, "Give us the money or get out of this house forever." So I walked out into the snow that night, with nothing but my coat, my car, and a broken heart. But what they didn't know was that leaving that house would be the beginning of something they never saw coming. The last Christmas I spent under my parents' roof, I was 26 years old, and I still believed in the magic of tinsel and turkey. I believed that the glow of the tree could melt away the frost between us. I believed that if I just tried hard enough, smiled wide enough, and brought the perfect gift, my family would finally feel like a family. Not a collection of strangers sharing a last name, but a real, beating, loving unit. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of the Christmas that broke me and the Christmas that set me free. The house on Maple Street always smelled like pine and cinnamon in December. My mother, Eleanor, had a ritual. She would bake a dozen different kinds of cookies, and the kitchen would be a warm, flower-dusted sanctuary. My father, Richard, would spend the day in his study, emerging only for the carving of the turkey, his hands steady and his eyes distant. He was a man of few words, but his silences were louder than any shout. My sister, Chloe, was the golden child. 2 years younger than me, she had inherited my mother's sharp cheekbones and my father's quiet confidence. She was a lawyer, a rising star in a firm downtown. I was a high school art teacher, a profession my mother referred to as sweet but impractical. The snow was falling in thick, fat flakes that Christmas Eve. I remember staring out the window, watching the streetlights paint the drifts in soft orange hues. I had arrived early, hoping to help with the cooking. I brought my own gift for the family, a framed watercolor of the old oak tree in our backyard. It was the tree I used to climb as a child, the tree where I'd hide when my father's silence turned to cold disappointment. It was my attempt to say, I remember when we were whole. My mother greeted me with a peck on the cheek that barely touched my skin. "Sarah, dear, you're early. The turkey won't be ready for hours." She wiped her hands on her apron, already turning back to the stove. She was wearing a gold sequin sweater, and her hair was perfectly coiffed. She looked like a magazine spread, and I looked like a rumpled snowman in my wool coat. "I thought I could help," I said, holding up my bag of groceries. "I brought some cranberry sauce, homemade." She glanced at it, a flicker of something, pity, annoyance, crossing her face. "We have the canned kind, Sarah. It's tradition, but thank you." She took the jar from me and placed it in the back of the fridge as if it were a discarded artifact. My father was in his leather armchair, a glass of scotch in his hand. He was watching a football game, but his eyes were on the fireplace. He grunted when I said hello. "Richard, Sarah's here," my mother announced, as if I were a delivery. "I see that," he said, not looking up. That was the first crack, but I ignored it. I always ignored it. Chloe arrived an hour later, her fiancé, Mark, in tow. Mark was a stockbroker, all smiles and expensive cologne. He carried a large, wrapped box that I knew contained a designer handbag for my mother and a new watch for my father. Chloe's engagement had been the talk of the family for months. The wedding was set for June. It was going to be a lavish affair, a country club reception, a 5-tier cake, a band instead of a DJ. The cost was astronomical, but my parents had never blinked. They were proud. They were paying for it all. I, on the other hand, had been quietly saving for my own down payment on a small apartment. I lived in a cramped studio, my easel sharing space with my bed. But I was happy. I had my art, my students, and a quiet, simple life. The dinner was a scene of forced cheer. The turkey was dry, as always. The stuffing was bland. The conversation was a minefield of polite questions about my little job and Chloe's big career. "So, Sarah," my mother said, passing me the green bean casserole, "any prospects, any young men?" "I'm focusing on my work, Mom." "Work, work, work," she sighed. "That's all you ever say. When I was your age, I was already married with a child." "And you were miserable," I wanted to say, but I didn't. I just smiled and ate. Chloe jumped in, changing the subject. "The wedding planner called yesterday. We're still waiting on the deposit for the band. They're holding the date until January 15th. She looked at my parents with big, pleading eyes. We need to get that to them soon. My father nodded, taking a sip of his wine. We'll take care of it, sweetheart, don't you worry. That was the moment the knife slipped under the tablecloth. My mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. She set it down with a delicate clink. She looked at my father, then at me. A strange, calculating look crossed her face. It was a look I had seen 1,000 times, the look before a storm. Well, she said, her voice syrupy sweet, speaking of money, we have something to discuss with you, Sarah. My heart hiccuped. What is it? She took a long, deliberate sip of water. The wedding, you know we've been planning it for a year. We've put our savings, our retirement fund into this. We want your sister to have the best day of her life. Of course, I said, my voice small. It's going to be beautiful. It is, she agreed. But we're a little short. The final payments for the florist, the photographer, the catering, they're all due next week. We've done everything we can. We've scrimped. We've saved. But we're still short, by a significant amount. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. How short? My father finally looked at me. His eyes were cold, like the winter sky. $25,000. $25,000. That was my entire savings. That was my future. That was my down payment. I laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. Well, I don't have that kind of money. I'm a teacher, Dad, you know that. My mother's smile didn't waver. That's why we're asking you. Not asking, Sarah, telling. She leaned forward, her elbows on the table. We need you to take a loan, or use your savings. We know you have some. You've been putting it away for years. My blood turned to ice. You want me to give you all my savings, for Chloe's wedding? It's not for Chloe's wedding, my father said, his voice low and steady. It's for your sister's future. It's for the family. When she marries Mark, she'll be set. She'll have security. We need to present a united front. A beautiful, perfect day. You can help us achieve that. But what about my future? I whispered. I was going to buy a place, a small place of my own. My mother waved her hand dismissively. You can buy a place anytime. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You have no husband, no children. You don't need that money now. The family needs it. And family comes first. Chloe and Mark sat in uncomfortable silence. Chloe wouldn't meet my eyes. She was staring at her plate, her face flushed. Mark was studying his watch. Chloe, I asked, turning to her, do you agree with this? She bit her lip. Sarah, I don't want to cause a fight. It's just a loan. They'll pay you back. With what? I asked, my voice rising. Their retirement. They just told you they've drained their retirement fund. That's enough, my mother snapped. Her voice lost its syrup. It was now a blade. We are your parents. We have given you everything. We fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. We sacrificed for you. And now, when we ask for a little help, you sit there with that wounded look on your face. It's not for us, Sarah. It's for your sister. She is getting married. You are not. You will never have a white dress, a church, a husband. Not with that attitude. So the least you can do is contribute to the one thing in this family that is actually happy. The words hit me like a physical blow. You will never have a white dress. A husband, not with that attitude. I looked at my father. Dad, you're okay with this? He poured himself more scotch. Your mother is right. It's a small sacrifice. You'll thank us one day. It builds character. Builds character. I had spent my whole life building character, building a shell to protect myself from their disappointment. And now they wanted me to hollow out the last solid thing I had. The fireplace crackled. The Christmas tree sparkled. The snow fell outside, silent and relentless. And in the cozy dining room of my childhood home, I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. I pushed my chair back. It scraped against the hardwood floor, a sound like a scream. No. My mother's eyes widened. Excuse me. I said no, I repeated, my voice shaking but firm. I am not giving you my savings. I am not taking a loan. My future is not a backup fund for Chloe's wedding. My father slammed his glass down. You will not speak to your mother that way. I will speak to her however I have to, I shot back. You have spent my entire life telling me I'm not enough. I'm not beautiful enough, not successful enough, not good enough. I live in a studio apartment and I teach children how to paint, and I am happy. I am happy, Dad. Don't you understand that? I don't need your money. I don't need your approval. And I sure as hell don't owe you my life savings because you planned a wedding you can't afford. The silence was deafening. Even the fire seemed to hold its breath. My mother stood up slowly. She smoothed her gold sequined sweater. She looked at me, and in her eyes I didn't see a mother. I saw a stranger. A cunning, cold-hearted woman who had always seen me as a disappointment. "If you don't give us the money," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "then you are no longer welcome in this house." My heart stopped. "What?" "You heard me," she said. "This is my house. I have rules. Family supports family. You are choosing to not support us. So you can either give us the money or you can pack your things and leave. Tonight, right now." Chloe finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Mom, you can't do that. It's Christmas." "It's about principles," my mother retorted. "She needs to learn a lesson." I looked at my father. He had turned back to his scotch. He wasn't going to stop her. He never did. A slow, cold wave of rage washed over me. It was so powerful, so pure, that it burned away the fear. I had spent 26 years trying to earn their love. I had swallowed their insults. I had accepted their neglect. I had pretended that their coldness was just their way. But this was not a misunderstanding. This was a transaction. They were selling my dignity for a floral arrangement and a DJ. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I didn't know what I was doing. I only knew I couldn't stay. "I'm leaving," I said. My voice was calm, so calm it scared me. "But I am not leaving because you told me to. I am leaving because I finally see you. I see you both, for who you really are." I walked to the coat rack and grabbed my wool coat. I put it on slowly, my fingers numb. I looked at the framed watercolor I had brought, the old oak tree. I walked over to the table and picked it up. I took the painting out of the frame, and I tore it in half. "That was for you," I said, letting the pieces fall to the floor. "That was my love, my memory. You don't deserve it." My mother gasped. My father stood up, his face red with fury. "Get out, Sarah, and don't come back." I didn't look back. I walked through the kitchen, past the cooling cookies, past the jar of homemade cranberry sauce I had brought. I opened the front door and stepped into the frozen Christmas night. The snow was still falling. It landed on my hair, my shoulders, my eyelashes. The street was quiet, the houses glowing with warm, yellow light. I could hear Christmas carols from a neighbor's open window. Silent night, it was mockingly beautiful. I got into my beat-up Honda Civic, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I drove away from Maple Street, away from the Christmas tree, away from the house that had never felt like a home. I drove for an hour aimlessly. I had nowhere to go. My friends were all with their families. My savings were frozen in my account, and I had no idea what to do. I pulled over at a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. I sat in a booth, staring at the chipped formica table. A waitress with tired eyes asked me if I wanted anything. I ordered coffee, even though I hated coffee. And then I cried. I cried until my chest ached. I cried for the little girl who used to climb the oak tree, who used to believe that if she just jumped high enough, her father would catch her. I cried for the teenager who spent hours in her room painting, because it was the only place she felt alive. I cried for the adult who still, foolishly, believed that this Christmas would be different. I sat there for 3 hours, nursing a single cup of coffee that had gone cold. The diner was mostly empty. A man in a trucker hat read a newspaper. A couple argued quietly in a corner. And then a voice said, "You okay, hun?" It was the waitress. She had a name tag that read Betty. She was maybe 60, with silver hair and a warm, crinkled smile. I shook my head. No, not really. She slid into the booth across from me. "Christmas isn't always the one they show in the movies, is it?" "No," I whispered, "it's not." She didn't push me for details. She just sat there with me in the silence. After a few minutes, she said, "I have a spare room above the diner. It's small, but it has a bed and a lock on the door. You can crash there tonight. No strings. Just a cup of coffee in the morning." I should have been suspicious. I should have said no. But there was something in her eyes, something so genuine, so unguarded, that I couldn't refuse. "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking. "Don't thank me yet," she said, chuckling. "The bed's lumpy and the radiator clangs." I stayed in that room for a week. A week where I didn't answer my phone. A week where I lived on leftover pie and instant noodles. Betty never asked questions. She just brought me food and said, "You'll figure it out. You have that look." And slowly, a plan began to form. I didn't give my parents the money. I didn't even respond to the voicemails Chloe left, pleading with me to be reasonable. I blocked their numbers. I cut the cord. A month later, I found out that Chloe's wedding was postponed. The band had pulled out. The florist had sued for breach of contract. My parents had to take out a second mortgage on their house. The golden wedding, the perfect day, was crumbling. And I felt nothing, not joy, not revenge, just a hollow emptiness. But I also felt free. For the first time in my life, I was not accountable to them. I was not a disappointment. I was just Sarah. I went back to my teaching job. I sold a few paintings online. I moved into a tiny apartment with a south-facing window, perfect for my easel. I started painting again, not the oak tree of my childhood, but new things. A street corner, a cup of coffee, Betty's hands lined with years of work. Life moved on, the spring came, the snow melted, and I began to heal. But healing is not a straight line. It's a messy, jagged path, and I often stumbled. One evening in May, I received a letter. It was in my mother's handwriting. The envelope was thick, and it smelled like her perfume, rose, and vanilla. I knew I shouldn't open it, but curiosity is a cruel mistress. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no salutation, just this. "Sarah, the wedding is off. Mark called it off 2 weeks ago. He said he couldn't marry into a family that would tear itself apart over money. Chloe has moved to a rented room in the city. She won't speak to us. She blames us. We are selling the house. Your father is taking early retirement, but his health is failing. The doctors say he has a heart condition. We are alone. You were right, we were wrong. I don't expect you to forgive us. I don't expect you to come back. I just wanted you to know that the tree you painted, the oak tree, I kept the pieces. I glued them back together. It's on my nightstand. It's the only thing I have that reminds me of you. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Mom." I stared at the letter. My hands trembled. The tears came again, but they were different now. They were not tears of rage or self-pity. They were tears of grief. Grief for the mother I never had. Grief for the father who never held me. Grief for the sister I lost. But I also felt a strange sense of closure. She had said the words. She had admitted it. Not because I forced her, but because she was sitting in the wreckage of her own choices. I folded the letter. I put it in a drawer next to my passport. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Chloe. "Sarah," her voice was shaky, "please don't hang up." "I'm not going to hang up," I said. "I'm sorry," she said, and she broke down. She sobbed for 10 minutes. She told me she had always known what our parents did was wrong, but she was too scared to stand up to them. She told me that Mark leaving was the best thing that had happened to her, because she finally saw herself, and she didn't like what she saw. "I was a coward," she said. "I let them use you. I let them treat you like a piggy bank, and I just sat there eating my turkey." I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't okay, but I said I understand. We talked for 2 hours. We didn't talk about the wedding. We talked about our childhood, about the oak tree, about the time I taught her how to paint a rainbow and she used the entire tube of blue in one go. We laughed. We cried. We were, for the first time in our lives, sisters. I decided to go back to Maple Street, not for revenge, not to rub salt in the wound, but to see the tree, to see the pieces of my painting glued back together. I drove up on a Saturday morning in June. The house looked smaller, older. The front yard was unkempt. There was a "for sale" sign in the yard. My mother opened the door. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was gray. Her face was gaunt. She wore a simple gray dress, no sequins. She saw me, and her eyes filled with tears. "Sarah," she whispered. I didn't hug her. I couldn't, but I didn't turn away. "I came to see the tree," I said. She nodded and stepped aside. I walked through the house. The living room was bare. The Christmas tree was gone. The dining table was gone. Only the fireplace remained, cold and empty. My father was sitting on the couch. He was thinner, his face pale. He had an oxygen tube near his nose. He looked up at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't indifference. It was shame. "Sarah," he croaked. "Dad," I said. I sat down on the armchair across from him. We didn't speak. We just sat in the silence. But this time, the silence wasn't cold. It was heavy, pregnant with everything unsaid. My mother came back with my painting. She handed it to me. It was carefully framed again, the torn edges visible but glued with such precision that it looked like a mosaic. It was beautiful in its imperfection. "I spent hours on that," she said, her voice small. "Thank you," I said. I took it. I held it against my chest. We all walked to the backyard. The old oak tree stood tall, its leaves rustling in the summer breeze. It had been my refuge, my sanctuary, my silent friend. I placed the painting at the base of the tree. "This is where it belongs," I said. "Not in a house, not in a frame, here with the roots." My mother started to cry. My father took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. I turned to them. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said. "Not today, maybe not ever, but I want you to know I am okay. I am not broken. I have a life. I have a job. I have Betty, who is like a second mother to me. I have my art, and I have Chloe." I looked at my sister, who was standing by the back door, her eyes red. "We can try," I said. "We can try to be a family, but it has to be on my terms. No money, no demands, no expectations, just being together when we can, being honest, being kind." My father nodded slowly. "We can try, sweetheart." That word, sweetheart, hit me like a punch. He had never called me that before, not once. I walked over to him and took his hand. It was frail and cold. I held it for a moment. "I love you, Dad," I said. It was the first time I had said those words to him in years. He squeezed my hand. "I love you too, Sarah. I've always loved you. I didn't know how to show it." It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a Hallmark movie. We didn't all hug and cry and sing carols. My father's heart condition was real. My mother's grief was real. Chloe's broken engagement was real. And my scars were real. But we started. We started with a cup of tea in the kitchen. We started with a walk around the block. We started with me telling them about my students and them telling me about their fears. I didn't move back. I didn't forgive everything. But I allowed myself to feel. I allowed myself to be angry, to be hurt, and to be hopeful. 3 months later, my father passed away. He died in his sleep peacefully with my mother holding his hand. I was there. Chloe was there. And in his final moments, he looked at me and whispered, "The tree, Sarah, paint the tree." I painted that tree. I painted it in every season, in spring with blossoms, in summer with shade, in autumn with fire, in winter with snow. I painted it 100 times, and each time I felt a little more whole. My mother sold the house. She moved into a small apartment near me. She came to my art shows. She learned to cook my cranberry sauce. She stopped talking about the wedding. She started talking about my life. We had Christmas dinner that year at my apartment. It was small. It was humble. There was no turkey, just a roasted chicken. There were no designer gifts, just a hand-painted mug from Chloe, a scarf from my mother, and a framed photo of the oak tree. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about the past. We talked about the future. And as we sat around my small table, with the snow falling outside my south-facing window, I looked at my mother, my sister, and Betty, who I had invited because she was family now, and I felt something I had never felt at a Christmas dinner before. I felt peace. Not the loud, glittering peace of a perfect holiday, but the quiet, real peace of a broken family that was learning to mend. The revenge I had dreamed of, the cold, satisfying revenge of watching them suffer, had never come. Because revenge is a poison you drink yourself, and I was done with poison. Instead, I had found something better. I had found the truth. I had found my voice. And I had found that the oak tree, the symbol of my childhood, my pain, and my resilience, still stood tall. It had weathered every storm, and so had I. That Christmas, as we clinked our glasses of apple cider, I raised a toast. "To the tree," I said. "To the tree," they echoed. And for the first time, I knew that I was home, not in a house on Maple Street, not in a perfect family, but home in my own heart. The story doesn't end there. Life goes on. My mother and I still have our fights. Chloe and I still have our silences, but we talk, we try, we fall and we get up. And every December I visit the old oak tree. The house has new owners now. The tree is still there, a silent witness to all the seasons of my life. I sit beneath it and I remember. I remember the girl who climbed it, the woman who broke free, and the artist who painted it back to life. My parents demanded money for my sister's wedding at Christmas dinner, or I had to leave the house. I left the house. But I didn't leave myself. And that, my friends, is the greatest victory of all.